Now. All right, let me just make sure that we are live on YouTube. Looks like the comments are working. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Van Alstyne, and welcome to the Social Academic YouTube channel. Today, I am talking with Cheryl Lau. We're talking about fear of judgment on social media. So this is going to be a fun conversation because I know I faced a lot of fear when it came to putting myself out there on social media. We're going to talk about some of my feelings and my stories today, and we're going to hear from Cheryl as well. So Cheryl, do you mind introducing yourself to everyone? Just give people an idea of who you are.
Sure. So hi, everyone who is on live or on the replay. My name is Cheryl Lau, and I am a PhD student, and I am also an online brand and content strategist. So what I do online is I help individuals and side hustlers to show up online confidently, to share their work and their message, and also to build a brand and business that really makes an income and impact. And I'm originally from Toronto, but currently based in Hong Kong.
Awesome. So today we're talking about a fear of judgment on social media. And I'm sure as a branding expert and coach, as someone who really works with clients who need to show up because they need to eventually sell things, you really need to understand what those fears are to help people move past them. Is that right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the internet, social media, these are tools that are generally free to use right now. And they're really a resource and tool that we can capitalize on, whether it's for researchers in terms of sharing their research, in terms of building your brand so that you can advance your career further on. There's so many opportunities and options that you can create for yourself just by showing up. So that's why I'm a huge advocate for just showing up online, even if you're a bit scared to do so.
That's great. Awesome. So the first question that I have for you is like what are some of those fears that people have when it comes to showing up on social media?
Yeah, there are many that I can think of. The first one that comes to mind is the fear of judgment. Another one is the fear of not being liked by everyone. Another one
Hmm.
would be, worrying that you're not getting the vanity metrics, the likes of followers that you want. So those are some of the ones that really come to mind when that question comes up.
Yeah, I think that's great. For the researchers that I work with, I think that there's a lot of fear of like what people's colleagues will think of them or maybe like what their students will see from them and like what they might learn and like maybe dislike or like less, or trust less in a course. And I'm always surprised by that kind of response because most things that people do share on social media is like their cat photos or a book they're reading, like the like personal things that don't necessarily make a huge impact on like whether or not we trust someone as an expert or not. So I was really excited that you wanted to have this conversation with me because that kind of fear of judgment, it can really stop us from being ourselves, but also from just like posting at all or enjoying our time on social media.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like now that you mentioned the word expert, and that leads me to think of another fear, which is the fear of not being expert enough or qualified enough or good enough, whatever that looks like to a specific person. But, if it really all comes down to one umbrella fear, I would say that the fear of judgment is kind of like the
Yeah.
overarching fear that
Mhm.
ties all these different smaller fears together.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And when we think about how imposter syndrome is such a big part of academia in general, it really makes sense that that fear of judgment is going to affect people on social media as well. So let's talk about some of those fears in more detail. What does fear of judgment usually, what does that look like?
What it looks like, it looks like either. Okay, so let's say you are a graduate student and you want to show up to share a piece of work or a message. And
Yeah.
there's generally speaking, maybe two options here. Either you do show up and you're worried about your post that you just shared, or you don't even post at all. You don't even share your work at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like if we look at it from a visual, if we were to visualize what it looks like, it could either look like one or the two the two scenarios.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that that's really important because one is starting to put yourself out there and explain that you're working in a specific field. When most people talk to me about like why they want to be on social media, especially things like Twitter, they say I want to connect with people in my scholarly network. I want to find more people who are thinking about or talking about the same things that I'm interested in. So when that fear of judgment results in not posting about the thing that you will actually connect with those people over, that's really kind of stopping you from your goal.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of times when I look at my own fears that I had in the past or fears I'm currently working through, it really comes down to the thoughts, the thought work that goes behind it. So, one thing that I've learned over time is that you really do get to choose what
Mhm.
you think about this fear of judgment. I mean, you can think that people are judging you, or you can think that they're just really curious about your work and they're actually just trying to learn more and maybe they actually find value from it. You really
Yeah.
never know what people are thinking. And so, sometimes people aren't even judging at all. They might just be passively consuming and briefly looking at your post on Twitter and then scroll right past it. So, one thing that you just mentioned, which I thought was really cool, was basically you said that we shouldn't let our fears be bigger than our goals or the impact that we want to make. And I
Right.
think that for a lot of graduate students, researchers, academics, impact and showing the value of your work is so important. But a lot of people just let that fear stop you from even making that impact, taking the first step to making that impact that you could actually be making.
Yeah. I think a good example of that comes up with my clients a lot, and also with the grad student groups that I train, is really that like when they win a big award or like when they get a big mention in like the university paper or like an article online, like when something big like that happens, they still don't want to share it. And like that's like something everyone wants to celebrate, even if you feel uncomfortable with it. So like having that kind of huge celebration thing, that if you weren't in academia, if you were working a job and you had a family and you were thinking about these things, that's something you'd probably naturally share because you know that other people want to celebrate with you. But in academia, so much of those like results are part of like your identity. And I think that kind of idea of self-promotion as a negative is really tied up in that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that you just brought up. I really do find that, from my experiences, people, my peers within academia or other students,
Mhm.
a lot of them are hesitant to talk about their results or their successes or wins because, as you said, they're scared of being seen as self-promotional. And that actually reminds me of a Twitter poll I did a few months ago. The poll was the question it asked was, "What do you think of personal branding? Is this self promotional or is this something that you are advocating for?" And the results were really split 50-50. And I think the poll had about 1,400 votes because Academic Chatter retweeted it, so it got a
Nice.
lot of responses. But it was very interesting to see the comment section in particular because the poll results was 50-50, like 50-50 very fluffy and
Wow.
self-promotional, 50%, you know what? I think it's very beneficial for my career.
Mhm.
The comments were very interesting. If I remember correctly, people were saying that, if you are going to brand yourself or talk about your wins and results, do it in a very subtle way. So I was like,
Hmm.
the comments are very interesting. That the perceptions that academics seem to have, because I tailored that question to academics, was very, very, very split. Let's just say.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I think that there's a fear of self-promotion as much as there's an understanding that it might be beneficial. And the people who are seen as doing it, they might have had help, to be honest. Like there are communications departments and universities out there that when they see someone who's publishing a lot and they're doing a lot of speaking events, they give them media training. They will help them out and make sure that they're like they have a message that they need to talk about. So that's something that is possible to get trained on, but it doesn't come naturally to most people. So when we think about personal branding for academics, it's kind of just trying to figure out like, who are you, what do you want to tell people about yourself, and how can we go about actually communicating that in a way people will understand.
Yeah, for sure. The point that I really love that you just shared was that, actually, I'm very curious to know, Jennifer, what do you think that the fear of judgment comes mostly from the fear of not being liked or the fear of not getting any response at all? Do you,
Hmm.
because that's a question I think quite a bit about sometimes, because when I work with my clients, half of them are worried about not being liked by others, but the other
Yeah.
half is worried about not getting any response at all. So I'm very curious to know, what are your thoughts on this actually?
I think that people have different expectations about what response they should get. And I think that's something that, like, in my cross-platform social media for academics course, which is like a paid course about how to write for social media across platforms for academics and researchers. In that course, I tell people a lot about what a response what a good response looks like on social media. When you're sharing something about your work, the response you want is like from people who understand what you were doing because you explained it to them, or because they were curious enough to look more about it on their own. It's people who understand why you're so excited about it, why it's important for you. And it's also like not just thank you or congratulations or that's awesome. Like, it's someone who has taken time out to really understand you and understand your accomplishment and congratulate you on it. I think that that is a very different expectation from someone who's thinking about, oh, I want 200 likes on my Facebook post because I got this really big award. And like, if I get 200 likes, that's going to show that my award was valid and worthy and like that I deserved that. I think that's the wrong mentality to have. And so there's a lot of education that goes into that particular fear when it comes to my clients. Like the type of engagement that you should be looking for is people who want to know more about you, people who want to connect with you, people who are interested in your work, not just now but in the future. There are different types of relationships that you can build. They don't need to be a lot of them. It can just be a few. And I think that when you switch that mentality from numbers to real connections and real engagement and real understanding of whatever it is you're bragging about, whatever it is that the self-promotion is, that's when people start to have the good positive feelings about engagement, about the response that they're getting, because they know their audience is actually listening.
I love that. And I think I think that the vanity metrics, the numbers, if you just look at the numbers, it's a neutral number. It's simply just a number. It's maybe 25 likes, 200 likes, whatever that number is. It's just a number. But we attach so much meaning to it that it sometimes detracts us from the goal of making an impact, of showing the value of our work. And that's one of the common, I guess, mistakes I see with clients and my audience is that they just get so hung up on the numbers. But if you can just simply detach from the outcome, just really focus on, how can I get my message and work out there and get it in front of the right eyeballs, get it in front of the right people so that it's actually making the impact. Because a lot of times if you go viral, it doesn't really indicate that it's making an impact. It's just a lot of people temporarily for that moment like your posts.
Yeah.
So a question that I always like to ask my clients and my audience is, what do you actually want to be known for? And
Hmm.
are you letting the obsession with the numbers get in the way of that thing that you want to be known for?
Mm-hmm. Hi, Larry. Just saw the chat. Welcome to our talk about fear of judgment on social media. Feel free to ask questions if you're joining us live. Be sure to drop a question in the chat box. So one of the other things that you brought up, you talked about fear of judgment, and you also talked about like wanting to be liked by everyone. I think I hear that a lot. It's just like an unreasonable expectation to have. Like in your real life, probably not everyone likes you because you don't get along or you have differing views, or maybe you got in an argument once and that was enough for them. Like there's all sorts of things that happen that cause people to not like us. I think I dealt with a lot of that when I was younger. I wanted to be liked more than I was. And then I eventually became really happy that some people really liked me. Like they really liked me and they wanted to be friends with me, and like they actually cared about me and my feelings. And that's a totally different type of relationship than wanting everyone to like you. I think, yeah, that is a big fear that people have. But I usually just tell people like, to get over it. But that's probably bad. What are your tips for that? Because obviously like mine is harsh.
So my thoughts on if someone were to come to me and they had a fear of not being liked by everyone, the first question I would ask is, do you like everyone that you have encountered throughout your life?
Oh,
Likely
that's
not.
good.
Very likely not. But then again, the next thing I want to bring up is that you really do not need to rely on any validation from someone else in order to show up online and share your work and your message. You really do not need anyone to tell you that, you know what, I like you, I like your work, I think it's good enough to be shared with the world online. You really
Mm,
don't need that. And I think one mistake that or one trap that people fall into as a result of this fear of not being liked by everyone is that they, in order to increase the chances of people liking them, they will just say and do what everyone else is saying or doing, and as a result they're just becoming carbon copies, a generic cookie cutter version of everyone else. And that really just dilutes your entire brand, your message, and your work. And you essentially get washed out in your field. I mean, think about it. Thought leaders in your niche, in your field, in your industry, they're not really carbon copies of anyone else, but they are the
mm,
ones who have their own stance on something and they back it up. And they're open to hearing different viewpoints, but ultimately they have their own opinions, their examples, and their experiences that they stand behind. And
yeah.
so I think a question that I want to bring to offer to anyone who's dealing with the fear of not being liked by everyone is, you know, if you're trying to please everyone and you're not really standing in your own true message, then are you really operating honestly or in integrity? Because if you're just trying to
Mm.
be a people pleaser and you're trying to say things just to please other people, how honest are you in that messaging that you're sharing?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think when a lot of people start being on social media, there's an inclination to copy the people that they follow that are the most popular or that get the most likes. Um, but oftentimes when I see content that gets a lot of likes in my personal network, it's not necessarily content that would resonate in the same kind of way with my audience, which is mostly academics and researchers. And so because of that, like knowing the people that you want to connect with is such a huge part of knowing how to actually connect with them, to know like what they might be interested in seeing from you. That was definitely something that I struggled with when I would first like became public on social media. And I've changed what I wanted to share over time, and a lot of that has to do with getting over some fears or developing new ones. And I think that that those kind of boundaries and lines, they're going to change with time, and that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that I've also changed my messaging since showing up
Mhm.
online. And I would say I started really using social media for brand building
Yeah.
late 2018. And
Okay.
since then, my messaging has changed because my personal life has changed. The events
Mhm.
that have been happening have changed. And so my response to these external situations have also pivoted and evolved over time. And, I guess another question that I would like to offer anyone who's watching this and they're worried about the fear of not being liked by everyone is, what do you really want to say or share? And do you like your reasons for it? Because if you like
Mm.
your reasons for it, then it's good enough. You don't need validation from anyone else to share
Yeah.
your own opinions and experiences.
Yeah, I think that that's great. Definitely. Oh, sorry. I don't think I muted my phone. That's embarrassing. I think that one of the things that really stresses me out when I'm on social media and I don't know exactly who I'm talking to is that it makes it so much harder to actually write for the people who are listening. Like if I'm writing for my friends and family, there are some things that they need that my Instagram audience for at higher ed PR isn't necessarily going to need from me. And so I think that knowing like what your goals are in terms of like who you want to reach or what you want to share, what you enjoy talking about, like that makes a big difference for how you feel about actually sharing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, for my personal example, for a personal example, I have quite a number of peers or friends offline who I know in person who follow me now on social media, even though they're not really my target audience. but they're still creeping my Instagram stories. They're still liking my posts. So,
Yeah.
even if someone isn't necessarily your target audience, they can still take interest or they can still show support. And who knows? I mean, for example, very recently I got a message in my DMs from a, a peer from many years ago, back in I think high school or early university years. And she said, I've been watching your stories, even though I'm not really your target audience, but I still really enjoy watching it. And
Mhm.
so people can still find value in your content and your message and your work, even if they're not necessarily the target audience. You never know who you're going to
Yeah.
attract.
I think that's such a good point. There is actually someone, my big sister from like the big sister, little sister corporation, for when I was a child. I noticed that she was watching my Instagram stories on my work account at Higher Ed PR, and she watched them like every day. And so I sent her a message, and I was like, I just want you to know that like you honestly you helped inspire me to go out on my own. You are a woman of color in research, and like I admire you. And so I sent her this message and we started talking again. Now we talk on Zoom every month and it's great. And I'm like, I never would have noticed that if she hadn't watched my Instagram stories. We even ended up working together on a project. So there's so many things that can come out of just kind of showing up and seeing who's interested in hearing it. We have a question, from Brittany Trin, who joined me for a feature interview on the Social Academic a couple months ago. She says, how do you suggest to overcome instances where people do judge you negatively online, like dragging on Twitter?
Ooh, getting dragged on Twitter. That's a fear that I think a lot of academics would have, especially if they're in
Yes.
academic Twitter. You know, I think I haven't, because I'm not that active on Twitter. I
Hmm.
haven't been dragged on Twitter yet. But if I was to get a negative response or a comment on Twitter or any social media, I think two things. So number one is, do I necessarily agree with that person? Is their comment or feedback really going to serve me? Is it going to help me improve my messaging, my work? If no, I'll let it go. If it was really from a malicious, uh, like a clear hater, like a random hater, we can just ignore that. We can easily just
Hmm.
ignore, let it go. But if there was some substance to that person's feedback, if it was a very critical, uh, what was the word? Critical feedback, constructive criticism. If it was constructive criticism, then it's something for us to look into and to maybe have a discussion with that person about, and have an open dialogue and show that, what, I am open to having feedback and I'm open to improving, but still develop your own opinion by the end of the conversation. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I think it does depend where it happens, right? Like if this is on your Facebook profile, which I actually see, I have seen this happen to professors who I know personally, where someone in their comments hates something they say and will like completely trash it and be like cruel, and everyone else who's in the comments is like, what are you doing? Like, who are you? And then someone deletes someone or unfriends someone and it turns into this big thing. But you know what? People like who experience that seem to get pretty used to it. I'm actually writing about like when tweets go wrong and like what to do about it for my next blog post on the Social Academic. So I'm excited to talk more about that. But here are the things that have like kind of come up in my research already. So the first thing is like you always have a choice whether to respond or not respond to something. You can block someone, you can mute someone, you can delete your original tweet and just have everything disappear into the ether as much as possible. You can set your account to private. Like all of these are valid and acceptable responses to dealing with trolls on social media. You do not have to confront or talk to or respond to anyone that you don't want to on social media. That being said, sometimes people say the wrong thing on social media, and if you are someone who said something that people have taken the wrong way and they've actually like misunderstood you, it's okay to correct yourself. I actually don't recommend taking down your original tweet. Like, just correct yourself. If you're in a situation in which you feel like you should apologize, you should think about it for a day and then apologize. I always recommend, like, if something is emotionally triggering, if you're feeling anxious about it, like, step away. take at least an hour, 2 hours, and like think about like what you actually want to do. Do not like respond to a troll by like responding immediately. Like it always turns bad. You never know if like you've misunderstood someone or if they're in a terrible mood or like, I don't know. So whatever you choose to do is right. The one thing that I recommend, you don't do is just like argue. Like don't sit there and just argue and argue and argue.
Those are some really great points. And yeah, thanks for sharing that. That actually led me to think of another point that I just want to follow up with is I've seen examples of, because you mentioned people deleting their tweets and then not really taking responsibility for it necessarily, especially if it was if they said something, I guess, wrong, or they didn't really think it through. I have seen examples of people who initially had a post and then maybe they've gotten some criticism that disagreed with their posts, and then they would delete the post and then basically they'll post something again, but then it was completely changed up, and it felt like they were trying to please the masses. And I think that type of response to constructive criticism or feedback may not be the wisest choice, just because it shows that an individual might not be strong in their own standpoint and they're just trying to please others. I think if they really want to become a thought leader in their field, really back your ideas and have reasons for why you said something. And it's just like making a logical argument. How can you stand behind your argument, and how can you provide evidence to support that argument?
Mhm.
But also be open to other people's perspectives and feedback, of course. But how can you really differentiate yourself by being a thought leader in your space instead of just trying to please every single viewpoint out there?
Yeah. I think when it comes to like fear of judgment, people are really anxious about that like really negative reaction or like hate DMs and like, getting a ton of angry people at them. And so like that's really rare. I mean, it does happen. You usually have to say something that you would know it's a little bit divisive, or you would know it would get potentially a negative response if you share this type of thing. But that's really rare. One of the people who like I'm going to be quoting in the article is actually Dr. Jennifer Polk, and she told me like she doesn't, even though she has a huge audience, she's like so many followers on Twitter, she doesn't get a lot of negative stuff. Like there's not a lot of people who are like really really angry or anything like that. She, most of the time she can respond to people by asking a question, and she doesn't have negative experiences even though she has such a huge audience. So I think that that's important to kind of keep in mind. Like even if a lot of people see what you're saying, like doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get that kind of response. You can take a deep breath and just like deal with something if it comes up by, again, any of those options that we talked about: muting, blocking, deleting. Like there's so many things you can do, but don't stress about it before it becomes an issue, because it'll keep you from posting. It'll keep you from enjoying yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that leads back to what are you thinking about these comments or trolls or haters, or even if it's constructive criticism, what are you choosing to think about it? I mean, are you choosing to think that, oh wow, people really are judging me, people really hate my work, people really think that I'm not qualified to talk about this? Or are you thinking, you know what? This troll is just really bored. They're just really, really bored to try to rip me apart on Twitter. Or maybe, wow, this person actually really cares about helping me refine the messaging. You can really choose how you perceive a situation or a comment. So I
Yeah.
really think that a lot of times when you get negative experiences, it really comes back to the thought work.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. That being said, if someone is trolling you and you go to their profile and they're like definitely an actual troll who does this regularly, block them. Like don't even think about it twice, just block them.
They're just bored. They're just really, really
Yeah.
bored.
So, Cheryl, can I ask you like what are some of the things that like you might recognize as okay, well, fear might be the thing that's stopping me from showing up? Like what are some of those signs that fear might be the issue?
I think if you are looking at someone else doing something that you want to do, but you're telling yourself, yeah, it's great that they can do it, but I can't. I don't think I'm cut out
Mm,
for this. I think that's a pretty clear indicator that a fear is stopping you. Because, I, when this comes up, I like to ask people, do you like telling yourself that you can't do this? Do you like spinning out in your
Yeah.
own thoughts and telling yourself that you're not cut out for this? Or would you rather just take the first step and then assess the situation, refine it, improve, and keep moving forward? Because,
Mhm.
for me, it really does come down to the thoughts that we are thinking about our fears. We can either let our fears stop us from making the impact that we can make, or we can use other people as examples of what's possible for us and take action on it.
Hmm. I think that's great. Like if you see someone doing something that you think you can't do, like why is that stopping you? It goes back to asking yourself like why you're feeling the way you're feeling, why you're thinking about the things or focusing about on the things that you are. Can I ask like is there a fear that you had that just like stopped you from doing something for a long time?
Okay. Yes. So a few years ago, I was in law school, but then actually
Mm.
ended up dropping out because a legal career was not the right fit for me. I figured that out a year into law school. And so I dropped out of law school. And honestly, I I was in like a career depression or a career ruts, you could say. Didn't really know what I was doing with my life at that point. But I knew that my story is relatable to someone out there. I knew that someone would resonate with this. And I wanted to start a YouTube channel. I wanted to start an Instagram. I wanted to just share this message out there and just connect with people. But for a few months, I couldn't do it because I was so scared what my law school classmates would think. Actually,
Mm.
when I did start that, when I posted my first video, I did get some feedback from my law school classmates that were not that great, but because they really weren't supportive of my decision to leave law school. They really felt that
Yeah.
I should have just stuck it out.
Mhm.
So it was very interesting to get that feedback, but I did let that stop me from showing up online for a few months, um, because I thought that, oh, people are going to judge me. People are going to judge me for my decision to leave.
Mhm.
People have so much expectation for me. But one thing I learned from that experience is that people are so busy with their own lives. Even if they have something to say, they're still. It's also at the end of the day, it's your decision to share your message and your work out there. And actually, what had happened as a result of showing up online was so the ROI of that is so much bigger than if I were to have let that fear stop me in the first place. Because from showing up online, I've been able to build an audience. I've been able to meet friends and connect with people from around the world. I've actually been able to meet people online and offline as a result of it. And I also started a business as a result, and it's been very profitable and successful. And I've also been able to connect with people like you and be on have conversations like this, things that I would have never been able to do if I didn't put myself out there. And
For
I think
sure.
this really goes back to the original theme of this conversation, which is putting yourself out there to attract different opportunities to gain visibility and share your work and your message and really make an impact. And really think about if anyone has something that they really want to share, think about what's the worst that can happen if you show up online and share that work and message versus what's the best that can happen.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. You know, I kind of think about the content that we put out there in general. So like social media posts, blog posts, YouTube videos, like whatever you put out there. I like to think about it as an invitation. Like you're welcome to check it out. I'd love it if you did because I worked on it and I knew a few people would like it. But if you like it too, that'd be great. Like you're invited to enjoy this thing that I've put out there. And when I think about it that way, when people do interact with it, when they like it or they respond to it, I'm always excited to see that because I didn't necessarily create it with that many people in mind. I didn't necessarily think about like all the people that I didn't know personally that would benefit from the things that I was creating. My world has just kind of grown from social media, and just like a few years ago, I had completely private accounts, and like I was not on Twitter at all. Like I was very anxious about social media in general, and I definitely had friends who were like social media influencers in their own right, or who had gone on to have awesome careers and then like got tons of connections because of that, or were actual stars, like actors, and like just like seeing how many people were following people that I was connected with. Like I never thought social media was like going to be a place for me. But it's where I found the most connections ever, like way more connections than I've thought possible. I don't know.
I completely relate to that. I mean, I feel like my network and friendships online are a lot, that the circle is a lot larger than my offline circles.
Mhm.
And you really never know who you're going to meet online. You really never know what awesome connections and friendships you'll meet or what
Yeah.
clients you'll work with and just who really finds value in your content or your work or your messaging. You really never know who's watching and who, even if they don't send you a message and tell you that, wow, I
Right.
really relate to this, they still find value from it. There's a lot of
Yeah.
silent lurkers who really find value in your work. So really think about, what is the impact that you want to be known for? And are you letting fears get in the way of that impact? Even if
Yeah.
you aren't seeing the immediate results, even if you aren't getting the DMs, if you aren't getting the likes, one thing I like to remind my clients and audience is that your content, you showing up, all that is working. And what I mean by that is that, for example, if you're building a personal brand, I mean, simply by showing up, you are building your brand. But your brand takes time to build. And every time you show up, every piece of content you post, it's working towards building that brand, that online presence, that impact that you're ultimately making as a whole. Because even if you post a post on Twitter or Instagram and it gets zero attention, someone might come back to it 3 months from now, 4 months from now, and they'll look at it and find value from it. And that creates that person's perception, or that really influences the way that person sees you. So
Mhm.
every time you show up, every single post you post, it's not just posting for that particular day and the vanity metrics you get in the first 24 hours, it's really building that brand over time. And things are working. Even if you feel like it's not working, it's working towards building your brand and your impact.
Yeah, I think that's so important. So my fiance is a PhD in English literature, and his focus was kind of like women crime writers from America. And when he wanted to connect with more people in his network on Twitter, more people that were interested in this, maybe the same writers or who were interested in films that were connected with the writers, he actually used those really specific search terms on Twitter and found people who had like posted about it like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, but like they were still interested in that topic. It's something that like people don't always think about in terms of how we can use Twitter to find people in our networks, to actually like reach out and connect with people more than just like following their retweets or something. Like you can find people who have the same interests as yours by using that search feature. And so that's definitely a possibility. Let's see. Yes, Larry says that he is watching from Venezuela. Thanks so much for tuning in, Larry. I really appreciate you joining us live. He let me know that he was coming live yesterday, so I was really excited when he showed up. So my next question for you, Cheryl, is like, what are some steps? Like, let's say we've recognized that maybe fear of judgment is stopping us from posting on social media. We know we should post, but like, what are the next steps, like, to moving past that fear? Because it's been paralyzing for a while. So like what comes next?
I think the first thing is okay, the most generic first step that I could say is just start showing up online and share it.
Mm.
But really think about, what is it that you already know? How can you start with what you know, and how can you be? Can you give me 1 second? I think my cat is scratching on the door. Let me just open the door for my cat
Yeah.
because she's
Oh,
going to
yeah.
keep
You're
scratching. One
totally
second.
fine. So I'll tell you guys what I like to do. So for my clients, because a lot of people who join my course have like maybe never posted on social media or know that they want to be on Twitter or LinkedIn. And so they're doing it for the first time. The first post I like to have people do, because it is anxiety provoking to come up with something to say, is just to introduce themselves. Be like, I usually say something like, "Hi, I'm Jennifer Van Alstyne, and I do this thing, and this is what I like to share on Twitter or maybe on Instagram. And I'd love to connect with you. So, say hi, let me know you saw this post, and here's something cool about me, or here's a fun fact about me." So having like just an introduction post, it's something that is a good thing to practice because not many of us do it very often, but it's also something that is really gonna engage your audience. You're actually going to get a response from people because they're like, "I know you. Hi." And they're more likely to respond by, talking in the comments and maybe sending you a DM or giving that a like when they don't like very many things. So introduction posts get really high engagement. So if you've never shown up online, that's a good place to start, from my opinion. Now, Cheryl, that you're back, I'd love to hear your tips.
So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I do agree that an introduction post usually does really well, and actually It's October 1st where I am right now, which reminds me it's time for my monthly introduction Instagram stories. Because on the first of
Nice.
every month, I like to do a reintroduction every first of the month, because I think that every month I get some new followers, and I just want to reintroduce myself in case anyone wants to reconnect with me. And your audience, the ones who are really loyal fans and watches their Instagram stories, they enjoy content like that. So that's one thing a practical tip I would suggest is to do a monthly introduction, perhaps.
Yeah, that's
But
great. And now, so you do it monthly, but like the same people are watching it sometimes, right? Like people don't necessarily get bored that you've done it before. Is that right?
I would say so, because I know
Yeah.
that when I see my favorite content creators on Instagram or wherever, yeah, Instagram, and they introduce themselves again, they go over their regular spiel and they add on different examples every
Hmm.
time. I still enjoy it because I really just genuinely like them and their personality. So I think
Yeah.
that some people may follow you because they really like the educational tips that you provide, the step by steps, the very value jam packed value that you give. Other people might like your personality and they're just following you because they like your energy. Some people like both. You really, just by showing up as yourself and just delivering value consistently, you know, no need to worry about if people are getting bored of it. Just keep delivering value, and the right people will enjoy it no matter what.
That's perfect.
And another practical tip that ties in with this is I find that doing Instagram stories has helped me accelerate my own confidence
Hmm.
as a person, offline and online. Because and one thing I actually recommend all of my clients to do is I actually make them do a challenge. So I would challenge them to do Instagram stories for 2 weeks straight, every single day. It can be like 15 seconds, it can be 30 seconds, it doesn't matter, as long as you commit to doing a video story every day for just 2 weeks. But one thing that I would like to modify that, one thing I would like to modify is that maybe for someone who's really beginning their journey on social media, maybe you can start with, if you want to increase your confidence very quickly, is to just start with 1 week 5 days of Instagram stories for 15 seconds, then the next week 30 seconds, then the next week 60 seconds. Because
Hmm.
right now is truly the best time to start practicing your confidence and your speaking and your articulation and your comfort with social media. Because especially if you're just starting out, the chances that your audience is smaller is pretty high. And so right now is the best time to, quote unquote, I guess, embarrass yourself rather than if you had a larger audience. Right now is the best time to just practice your confidence, practice the speaking, be more comfortable with social media than if you were to have like 10,000 followers and then you say something that was kind of like cringy, you don't feel confident, you don't feel good about it. Right now is a better time to just throw yourself out there and practice, so that by the time your audience grows and grows and grows, you're at a much better, you're much more confident and maybe even more well versed and confident in whatever it is that you're talking about.
I like that. Instagram stories definitely helped me kind of get my confidence up to start doing these kind of live videos. I definitely felt less comfortable with Instagram stories than I do with YouTube live. So I don't necessarily think that it's for everyone, but it's such a great way to start practicing just like talking and being okay with making mistakes and like being okay with not necessarily knowing exactly what you're going to say next. Like you can't really have a script and hold your camera at the same time. Like it's not going to work. So it's a good way to practice like just kind of being yourself and seeing that people will respond. Like some people will watch your thing all the way through and you're like, wow, you watched 30 seconds of me talking about my favorite TV show. I'm kind of surprised, but I'm glad that you liked it and maybe you'll watch that TV show now. I'm shocked when some people like watch especially my personal Instagram stories. I'm like, I'm sitting on the couch with my cats. Here's another photo of my cats playing. Here's like a photo of what I'm cooking. And people like will watch the whole thing. I'm always surprised, but like the fact that people are watching means that they're still interested in seeing more content, especially if you post multiple things. But in general, I find that just showing up on a regular basis in any way that like you're not comfortable with will help you start to develop ways around that. I was uncomfortable being public on social media. And then I took all of my accounts public and I just kind of dove in and tried to figure out how to go about it and how to be myself or be professional and like all of these things. Like I wasn't exactly sure, but I made the decision and I moved forward with it. I felt really uncomfortable when I started posting on Instagram about myself, or posting videos on Instagram was scary. Like there's so many different things now that I think back that I was really scared of, and like was like, I'm never doing this. And now I'm like on YouTube Live talking with you. So I don't know. I feel like for me, really just like committing to moving past something, like once I recognize that, like, okay, this is good for me and I kind of want to do it and I should do it. And then I'm just like, okay, I'm going to do it. And I put it in my calendar, and that's my commitment.
My favorite thing about what you just shared was you just made a decision and you moved forward. That was my favorite thing about what you just said, because
Mhm.
a lot of times if we're just spinning out in our thoughts, that doesn't serve us or the audience we want to serve. Just
Yeah.
if we're just in our thoughts and not even taking any action, not only are we going to feel bad about not doing anything, but we're not helping anyone. No
Mhm.
one gets to see our work and feel the impact and value of our message and work. And so, you know, we really I really think that when it comes down to the fear of judgment or just the fear of showing up on social media, really, really think about, what do you really want to be known for? And what is getting in the way? What thoughts are getting in the way of that? And and then choosing whether you want to let that fear hold you back, and or whether you want to be bigger than that fear. And then what actions do you need to take moving forward from there?
I think that's great advice. Now, one thing that I think might come up for some academics who are thinking about this, maybe on their personal accounts where they don't share as much work stuff, like the fear of judgment might also be from friends. So, like, what you're known for might not be like the thing that works if you're sharing mostly personal content. If you're still afraid of showing up in some way, like of posting things about your life so that people can see it on Facebook, even when you want to, what is something that might work for them?
So the question is, how can someone show up on their personal accounts, right?
Yeah. Like, I think there's a lot of people who, don't post personal stuff because they think it's, too professional, or like they don't post professional stuff because they think it's too personal, or they don't post, a personal accomplishment because they're not sure how people will respond to it. I feel like there's a lot of fear of showing up just in their personal lives as well on social
That's
media.
an Yeah, that's an interesting question. Because I know that I have both my personal accounts, maybe on Facebook, and also my more public accounts like Instagram. Um, I and LinkedIn as well. I think that for me, what has really worked well is just to know that people, some people really do find value even from your post, even if you're on a personal account and you post maybe a accomplishment or a thought that you had. Even if it seems completely irrelevant to your personal life audience, your personal connections offline, you never know who needs to hear that, who might get inspired
Yeah.
and wants to take action as well. You really never know who you will make an impact on, because people, even if they don't say anything, they're silently thinking and processing and
Mm.
thinking of how it can what they can do themselves. People are watching. You really never know.
I think that's great. I think that's really important, especially for our personal audiences, like our personal Facebook accounts, and anywhere else where we connect mostly with friends or family. You never know what people will connect with. You never know what people will want to celebrate with you, or what they'll empathize with you if you have something that's sad or anxiety provoking to share. I've seen a lot of friends post about things that you might not think about sharing necessarily on social media in a public space, but it's with their personal audience. And there's a lot of empathy that I think that can happen on social media that, especially right now when we're social distance, you might not be able to get in person. So I feel like the fear of showing up in our personal lives too is kind of being able to put yourself out there and be vulnerable. Maybe like vulnerability is what I'm thinking about when I'm kind of like on that train of thought.
Yeah, I think, when it comes down to figuring out what it is you want to share, there's really no right or wrong about what you want to share. I think as long as you're comfortable sharing it,
Yeah.
share it. You know, as long as it's not discriminatory, it's not hurtful, harmful, maybe it's okay. It is okay to share as long as you're comfortable sharing it. I mean, it
Nice.
is your social media after all. It is your account. So I mean, the key word in social media is social after all. So if you can create connections, if you can forge better relationships simply by showing up and sharing something on your personal accounts, hey, that's the purpose of social media after all. People are going there for good content or maybe just for connections.
Hmm. My next question is how can being ourselves help us overcome these fears? How can showing up and just kind of being authentic help us?
Oh, that's a good one. So by being yourself, you're operating in integrity. You're not. I know the word the imposter syndrome fear comes up a lot,
Hmm.
but if you're just being yourself, it's really difficult to argue that you're being an imposter if you're just simply being yourself. If you're really sharing your own personal ideas, opinions, examples, experiences. So I think one thing to remember is that people really do not need you to be a carbon copy of someone else. They just want to. They can just go to the main source for
Mm.
that content. So by focusing on just being yourself, being your authentic self, just showing your personality, your energy, and your own perspectives, ideas, opinions, examples, experiences, it's less likely, number one, that you'll get washed out because the online space is quite busy, it's quite noisy, it's saturated. So just by being yourself, not only are you increasing your visibility and standing out that way, but also there is power. There's so much power in your message, your story, your voice, your content, your social media posts. So you get to decide how you want to show up online and how you want to use your social media to serve your audience, to make an impact. You really get to decide, are you willing to let that fear get in the way of that impact that you're really meant to make?
Hmm.
And how are you using your platforms to serve your audience and serve that greater impact that you want to make?
Hmm. Larry says one of the reasons why I left Instagram is because I felt that I was posting to please other people and not for me. Yeah, I think that that's something a lot of people struggle with, especially on Instagram. I feel like its reputation as being like a very branded place with very very like similar color schemes and really short quippy lines has kind of left that impression that like we need to write for other people, that we need to people please, that we need to be like everyone else. But actually, the things that perform best on Instagram that have been in terms of like the engagement, in terms of how people are responding to it, are authentic posts. And what I mean by that is like, you don't need edited photos. You can say negative things or like personal things or tell a story or share information about your research. Like there are long descriptions that you can write. You shouldn't feel like you need to show up every day. Like I think that's like a really old thing on Instagram where like people really felt the need to post all the time and like need to keep creating content all of the time. And I think that that's it's not going to work for most academics. It doesn't work for most people in terms of their daily lives, and it can create this really big expectation that we have to just constantly be creating. I just don't think that that's necessarily authentic for most people. And so there's a lot of things on Instagram in terms of our assumptions of how to use it and how other people think that we should use it that definitely feed into that fear. So what would you say? What would you say to someone like Larry who felt like they were trying to people please and because of that, like just left the platform?
Mm, I think, I first of all, I love what you just shared, Jennifer. The second thing that I also wanted to add in addition to what you shared was, it really comes back to the question of what do you really want to be known for online? Do you want
Mm-hmm.
to be known for posting things that other people think what you think that other people would want to see, or would you want to be known for something that you want to be known for?
Mm-hmm.
And whatever you choose to post online, do you like your reasons for posting it? If yes, great. If no, maybe tweak it. And I think that the comparison piece might also tie into this as well, because when you see other people posting about something else, then you naturally feel like, oh, I should be posting about that too. But that really, again, it goes back to the previous conversation about what do you want to be known for?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're just repeating what everyone else is saying, you're going to get washed out, and you're
Yeah.
not going to feel good about it. At the end of the day, I think our mental well-being comes first when it comes to social media.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times people can get burnt out because they're either posting inauthentically, or they're just posting way too much and they're just so tired from posting so much content.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe there's exhausted from consuming so much content. And I think just being aware of what feels good to you when it comes to social media, if it means posting once a week, great. If it means posting once every 2 weeks, great. Whatever feels best to you. But as a content creator, as someone who's posting something, really think about, do you like that post that you just posted, or did you feel like you were forced to post it?
Yeah,
Really
that's
assess your
good.
reasons for doing it. And if you like your
Mhm.
reasons, leave it. If you don't,
Yeah.
tweak it next time.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Asking yourself, like, after you've posted, is a great time to do it. And like, not in terms of like the reaction you got to it, not in terms of how many likes you got, but like, did you like writing that? Like, did you like sharing it? Was it something that you enjoyed? Because if no, don't do it again. You can change it to something else. Let's see in the chat. Brittany says, how can we choose the right platform for us to communicate so that we are posting with integrity? Ooh, that's a great question.
That's an interesting question. I think I would love to know your thoughts on this too, Jennifer. But I think the first thought that comes to mind for me is, what's the easiest platform for you to post content on? What is the path of least resistance for
Mhm.
posting genuine, authentic content? If video is really difficult for you, maybe use Twitter. Maybe just tweet a few sentences. If you really express yourself well with your body language, your mannerisms, maybe video is better for you. Whatever is easiest for you that lets you get your message across and lets your energy, your intention really show through the camera or the social media, the lens screen, whatever lets people really get to know you better, maybe that's the right platform for you. And whatever's easiest for you to create too. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts
that's
on
great
this?
advice. You said easiest. I usually tell people like spend time where you enjoy the most. Like if Larry, for instance, if you left Instagram because you don't really enjoy spending time on Instagram, you like don't necessarily want to interact with other posts. Not only do you not know what content create, but when you create content you don't enjoy doing it, then Instagram is not the platform for you. And that's totally okay. I think that happens to a lot of people where they think they should spend time on a platform and then they end up not liking it and feeling that they should stay. I usually tell people just leave and focus your energy where you're enjoying most. In terms of easiest, I think that that's also connecting it with your goals, and I think that's important. Like, where is easiest for you to get across the message that you want to get across in a way that you're enjoying getting that content across. Like if you're not enjoying it and it's not easy for you, you're not going to stick with it. So don't waste your time, because that's honestly what it's going to be. Like in 2 months, in 2 years, you're going to be like, I don't want to do this anymore, and you're going to stop, and that's okay. But if you feel like that now, like don't necessarily expect it to change.
I love that. And I think one more thing I want to add on top of what you just shared was, a lot of times people choose a platform based on what they think will get the most feedback or the most likes, the most metrics. But perhaps if we shift that question to what we just said, which is what's easiest for us, what do we enjoy the most, then the long-term ROI on that is a lot better than if you were to just think of what's the shortest, quickest ROI I can get.
Mm-hmm.
What's the easiest way to get more likes? We can shift that question to what's the long-term game I want to play.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't like creating it, you're not gonna. It's less likely that you'll stick it through.
Yeah.
Stick with it.
Matthew
Yeah.
says, definitely have to post or write for yourself as much as you're sharing content with your audience. Yeah, I think that's so important. I mean, I'm a writer and I have like really bad writing practice. Like I don't get up every day and write like some of my writer friends do. I don't write on a regular basis for my creative stuff. I am not particularly disciplined when it comes to deadlines and things like that for my creative projects. And I think that, like I'm okay with that. You just gotta like be okay with those things. And like, how you approach a social media platform and writing for that platform, how you approach storytelling and talking about yourself, it's going to be different based on the platform. And that's really different on like who you connect with. If you're connecting with your friends and family on Facebook, you're probably going to be writing different things than your researchgate or academia.edu audience. Like it's going to be different topics, it's going to be different content, and that's totally okay. So think about what you enjoy, think about what the people who are in your audience might want to see from you, and don't do things you don't want to do.
I love that. People can tell your energy. People can tell the intention and how the intention behind what you're saying, and people can really sense if you mean it, if you really care about what you're saying, if you really truly back what you're saying. People can tell even through the
Hmm.
screen.
Yeah, I think that, definitely on video, but I think that writing can do that too. If you have a tweet in which you show that you've thought about it, you show that you care, maybe you've even said it more than once, so people really get an opportunity to hear your message. Writing can resonate with people. Photos can resonate with people. So social media can have way bigger impact than you think, but it really does start with, trying to get over some of that fear of judgment and actually putting some content out there yourself. Cheryl, do you have anything else you want to talk about on these topics, or would you like to tell us more about your resources and what services you offer?
Sure. So, everyone, if anyone has any questions after this conversation, please feel free to send me a message on Instagram at Cheryl Theory. Just for fun fact, my last name is not Theory. Some people did mistakenly think that my last name was Theory, but it was because all variations of my personal name was taken. So I just had to think of a random Instagram name. So I ended up with Cheryl Theory because back in high school, I joked that one day I have my own theory. Hasn't happened yet. Maybe one day I have my own theory.
Oh, that's
But
so great.
or feel free to send me an email. You can find my website at cheryltheory.com, and you can find my email there. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out about whether it's social media, content, starting an online business, branding, whatever it is. I'm open to have a conversation with you. I do have a free resource, which is a personal branding guide. It's a PDF document. So if you want to find that, you can go on my website, cheryltheory.com/personal branding guide. Yeah, or you can just go on my website and it'll be on the first page.
Okay, I'm going to be sure to drop that link in the chat for everyone who needs it. What did you say your website was again?
cheryltheory.com.
Okay. All right, so that is in the chat, and you should be able to see that right when you're on YouTube. So thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. I feel like there are so many things when it comes to like what's stopping us from being on social media, or what's stopping us from kind of showing up and posting content. And I feel like we talked about a lot of those things. We worked through a bunch of them. And I think if you listen to this conversation, you probably got a lot out of it. So if you did, be sure to give this video a like, leave a comment, or let us know what you thought. And thank you so much for joining us. I see a bunch of you stuck out for the entire presentation. So I really appreciate all of you who came today.
Thank you everyone for being here live, or if you're watching the replay, thank you as well. This is a really, really fun conversation.
This was great. All right, everyone. Until next time, I'm Jennifer Van Alstyne. This has been Cheryl Lau. We've been talking about fear of judgment on social media. And be sure to subscribe to the Social Academic YouTube channel today. All right.